Okay, this lesson is going to cover sentence types. So I'm going to introduce to you 3 different types of sentences based on the structure of the sentences. And just so you know, there are actually 4 kinds, but in our class we're just going to focus on 3 because the 4th is just a combination of 2 of them. So the reason that I think this lesson is important is because, for one thing, to have good writing, you need to have a variety of sentences in your composition. So you need to understand the different options of sentences available to you. Second, if you understand the sentence types, then you'll know how to punctuate them properly, which is also important. Okay, so there are 3 sentence types that we're going to cover in our class. The first one is the simple sentence. The second one is the compound sentence. And the third one is the complex sentence. I don't want you to think this is the worst and this one is the best. That's not the case. They're just 3 distinct types. You as a writer want to use all 3 of them. You don't want an entire composition comprised of only complex sentences. So don't think because this one's called simple, it's not effective. So first, I'm going to walk you through the elements of a simple sentence. A simple sentence is the same as an independent clause, which we covered in the Introduction to Sentences lecture. So go back and review that if you're not familiar with what that is. So a simple sentence has a subject, it has a verb, it expresses a complete thought. So let me give you an example. Rahim finished his homework. By now, it should be simple for you to find these elements. Look at the beginning of the sentence. Rahim is who the sentence is about. He's doing the action. What he did is he finished. Remember, the subject and the verb go together. You can't technically have one without the other. Rahim finished. Some people think homework is the subject, but homework doesn't have a verb. Homework's not doing anything in that sentence, so it can't be the subject. So this is my subject, this is my verb. It's a simple sentence because it only has one clause, one subject-verb combination. Let me give you another example. The house and the car flooded. The subject is house and car. It's a compound subject. There are 2 nouns at the beginning of the sentence that tell you what the sentence is about, house and car. The verb is flooded. That's what the house and car did. Now, even though this has 2 subjects, it's still a simple sentence because it only has one subject-verb combination, only one clause. The house flooded, the car flooded. There's not another verb. These 2 are doing one action. So that still makes it a simple sentence. So to review, a simple sentence type has a subject, it has a verb, it expresses a complete thought. So the next sentence type that I want to cover is the compound sentence. A compound sentence is composed of 2 independent clauses, 2 or more, joined together. In other words, 2 simple sentences joined together in one sentence. Now, there's 3 different ways to punctuate or to create a compound sentence, so I'm going to show you all 3 of those. The first way is to join the 2 sentences with a comma and a word called a coordinating conjunction. The easiest way to remember your coordinating conjunctions is by the acronym FAN, boys. Each one of those words stands for your coordinating conjunction. So there's for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Those words are coordinating conjunctions, but I'm almost always going to refer to them as fan boys because that helps you to remember what the 7 of them are. So with a compound sentence, you join 2 complete sentences with one of these words, punctuated with a comma before the fan boy. So let me give you an example. I set my alarm. I slept in. I have 2 complete sentences, and I can join them with one of those words. In this case, I'll use but. So now I have one compound sentence. I've joined the 2 together with a comma and a coordinating conjunction or a fanboy. Let me give you one more. Gina loves dancing. She goes every weekend. Once again, these are two simple sentences, subject, verb, and I can join them together with one of my coordinating conjunctions. In this case, so. Now I have one compound sentence joined with a comma and a fanboy. That's the first way to form a compound sentence and to punctuate it. The second way is to use a single punctuation mark that's called a semicolon. So instead of using a coordinating conjunction to join these sentences, instead I can use a semicolon. A semicolon joins two complete sentences together. Notice this word is still not capitalized. This is not a new sentence, it's one compound sentence. So that's mechanically how it works. But in terms of style, you would want to make sure the two sentences really flow together and make sense together without any sort of transition word there. So you would not, for example, say, I love my children, semicolon, that house is brown. Because those sentences have nothing in common. You wouldn't join those together stylistically. So a semicolon is used when the two sentences go perfectly together, the semicolon joins them mechanically. So that's the second way to form a compound sentence, is just by simply joining the two sentences with a semicolon. The third way is similar. You join them with a semicolon, but you add a transition word to help the reader know how the two ideas are related. And the transition word you use in this case is called a conjunctive adverb. So again, I'm going to give you a list of words that tell you, that categorize your different transition words. So here I have, I set my alarm. An example of a conjunctive adverb is however. I set my alarm, however, I still slept in. The way you punctuate with this kind of a word is a semicolon to join the two clauses. However is an introductory word for this second clause, so there's a comma after it. So sentence, semicolon, conjunctive adverb, comma, your second sentence. That's the third way to form a compound sentence. So I can do the same thing here. Gina loves dancing, therefore, comma, she goes every weekend. Notice now that I've added those transition words, the sentences flow much more smoothly. So that's another reason sentence types are important, because they teach you how to connect your ideas with these sorts of transition words. The final sentence type that we're going to cover in class is the complex sentence. A complex sentence is composed of an independent clause and two or more dependent clauses. So remember back to the lecture on the elements of a complete sentence, a dependent clause has a subordinating conjunction that makes that clause not a complete thought on its own. A dependent clause, however, can join with an independent clause and make what's called a complex sentence. So let me give you an example of this, and I think it will make more sense to you. So we have, because he was exhausted, Jerome went to bed early. So here I have my subordinating conjunction, subject, verb, subject, verb. This is a dependent clause. Because he was exhausted, could not stand on its own as a complete sentence. It has to attach to a complete sentence to an independent clause. Jerome went to bed early could stand on its own. So that makes this a complex sentence because it has a dependent clause and an independent clause. You can form complex sentences in two ways. You can do what I've done here, which is begin with the dependent clause, begin with a subordinating conjunction. When you do that, the way you punctuate it is you put a comma at the end of your dependent clause. It doesn't go after the subordinating conjunction, it goes at the end of the clause. So that's one way to form a complex sentence. The second way is you can instead begin with the independent clause. So I could start the sentence with Jerome went to bed early and follow that with the dependent clause because he was exhausted. I still have my subject verb, but notice now I don't have any punctuation there. That is because when you begin the sentence with your main clause, with your independent clause, then the dependent clause can simply follow without any punctuation dividing them. So one way to think about this is that subordinating conjunctions never have commas next to them in terms of joining sentences. So you don't have a comma there, you don't have a comma there. So this is the third sentence type. It's complex. It's made up of an independent clause and a dependent clause, and you can join them in either way. Either start with the dependent clause followed by a comma, or you can start with the independent clause and then there's no comma.